Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy, the top 150 rankings for fantasy football, all skill positions going in to the 2024 season. Apologies for the late delay on the rankings this year. I was thinking about not doing them, but I've been updating them for like 3 months now, so I was like, I might as well release them to the public. And you can find them all in list form down in the description or in the Mayo Media newsletter, both completely free to join. So if you want to keep the updates on all of those, I'd recommend bookmarking that page because that's where I'm going to do the updates to the top 150. Tens of dozens of you have demanded the rankings because your drafts are coming up, so I wanted to push it to as long as possible from when people are actually doing their season-long drafts. People have been drafting on best ball and playing, and on Underdog playing best ball for ages now. These are season-long half-point PPR rankings. However, you should probably get in on Underdog. 2 reasons. 1, you support this show. So use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now. Get yourself a deposit bonus of up to $250. It's a free $250. You might as well take advantage of that with the deposit bonus for first timers. Additionally, I believe I'm going to be running a PME Pick'em Props League for the 2024 fantasy football season on Underdog. So I have a Google form down in the description right now that if you just put in your email and your Underdog handle, the link to get the $250 deposit bonus is in that Google Drive or Google link as well, and just fill that out, put in your username. That will qualify you to be in. I don't have the rules finalized yet. I don't have the payouts finalized as of yet, so it's officially off the books. But I'm gathering names now. If you want to pre-register for that, it's going to be a really fun tournament, and there's going to be a bunch of money at the very top, and you just have to play some pick'em props every single week on Underdog, and boom, you're in. You're going to be playing props anyway, so you might as well go do that. All right? So yeah. Underdog Fantasy code Mayo, that's how you get yourself in, and the Google form is down in the description. So let's get into the rankings themselves. As you can see up on the screen right now, Christian McCaffrey comes in at number 1, and this is going to be an abbreviated version of this show. I'm just going to do the first 2 rounds, top 25 or so. Again, you can access the full list in the description and in the newsletter by clicking through that link where I'll keep everything updated. I'll have a full breakdown show, hopefully with Jake Seeley, coming out next Tuesday, where we go over everything. Maybe I'll change them up a little bit, but here's where I've started on right now. McCaffrey 1, Jefferson, Lamb, Tyreek Hill, that mini tier of receivers at 2 through 4. Breece Hall, Bijan, and Jonathan Taylor, 5, 6, 7. Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Kyron Williams, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Chris Olave, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, and Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 20, and then into Nico Collins at 21, followed by DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, who looks like he's staying put in San Francisco for the moment. We'll see how that shakes out. Michael Pittman and Mike Evans. That's a top 25 for me. The first tight end on the list is Travis Kelce at 28, followed very briefly by Sam Laporta at number 29. And then the first quarterback that appears on the list is Lamar Jackson at number 34. It's a mini tier of Lamar, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts, all at 34, 35, and 36. Again, I'll break into more of why and guys down the list and why these tiers go when I get into it with Jake, but I really want to hammer out the first round and what you should do. Here's the thing. It's pretty difficult to screw up a first round pick. It's almost decided for you based on where you are selecting, be it 10th, 12th, 14th in the first round, depending on the amount of teams that you have going on. But you really need to form a strategy. I didn't take ADP into consideration with any of these guys. My process has been unchanged each of the past 3 years, and it's been the 3 most accurate drafting years that I've had in probably a decade. This is year number 16 of the Pat Mayo Experience. So there's been some good years, been some bad years. You're going to take some home run swings. But that's the whole point of fantasy football, right? You need to have those home run picks anywhere if you're going to win. So you have to take a few gambles. So I ran my projections at Run the Sims. Now, you can do the same thing if you want to. Run the Sims for season-long fantasy football projections, which are completely customizable. It's completely free. at runthesims.com. Now, the DFS package, the prop sniper, the simulations, those all cost more money. But if you are here for just season-long fantasy, I highly recommend that you use that free account. It just takes an email to put it in, no credit card or anything like that. Just an email. You go to season-long projections, and boom, you can customize anything any way you want, and it'll spit out your own projections for you. That's how you can get a leg up if you really feel like you know what's going on. So I did that for myself, put it out, and I was like, all right. So here's what the projections tell me. Now, I'm not a slave to projections, so I like to go through manually and be like, now I actually would rather draft this guy and this guy. Like, for example, I have Puka Nacua at number 16. That's one spot behind Devontae Adams. I originally had Puka up in this tier with Jamar Chase and Garrett Wilson, just inside the top 10. He has a knee injury in training camp. Do I know how serious it is? It doesn't sound like anyone knows how serious it is. He might be ready for week 1. He might miss a week, but I temper expectations with guys who have preseason injuries. Now, bruised knee sack is, I don't even really know how long that injury is supposed to go or if it lingers. He might be completely fine. So I still have him at number 14, but I'm a bit pensive. I've just been burned so many times with these preseason injuries. And if it's someone going late, then whatever. Then you're taking a gamble. You're taking that home run cup. But then I see something like Jahmyr Gibbs. I originally had him up in that tier with Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, and Jonathan Taylor. But all of a sudden, he has a hamstring injury. Now, Dan Campbell says he's going to be ready for week 1. That's great and everything. I hope he's ready for week 1. But, through the years of Alshon Jeffrey and all these guys who suffer soft tissue injuries, Cooper Kupp a year ago, in the preseason, it's just these are lingering injuries which pop up throughout the course of the season. It's not that Jahmyr Gibbs can no longer be the number 1 running back. I truly believe he could be in the right role, with the right usage, and completely injury-free, let's say, or even a little bit of injury. He could be the number 1 points per game guy at the position. So, would he be worth it there for me? Yes, he would. But going a little bit earlier, I've seen the reoccurrence of these hamstring injuries, quad injuries, whatever it might be. If it happens earlier in the year, they tend to push themselves too hard to come back, don't take the proper rest, then all of a sudden, they're back on the injury report. Now, if we see that he gets full practices in and he's running at 100% before week 1, then yeah, I'll probably try to bump him back up. But if it's still lingering around and then he's pushing to play week 1, I am worried that he's going to re-aggravate this at some time. It's one of the reasons why lower in the rankings, I bumped up David Montgomery a little bit. Now, I was already worried about a split between those guys anyway, in terms of, maybe it's not a 50-50 type split, but even if it's a 65-35, we saw last year, there's going to be games where when they truly want to pound the rock between the tackles, we're going to get an awful lot of David Montgomery. Now, if Gibbs can take over the full goal line role and get 50% of the rushing work plus what he does in the passing game, then he's a top 10 guy. No doubt in my mind he's a top 10 guy. But I just don't know if that's going to be the case right now. So I have that baked into the ranking. CMC is a bit banged up as well. He's sort of an outlier. Like any sort of issues with CMC, then all of a sudden, they're just going to shut him down to make sure that he's ready for the regular season. So I'm not too concerned about him. Then I have those 3 receivers like I talked about. You have Jefferson, Lamb, and Tyreek Hill. I do think that these are the 3 guys. And honestly, I think it's Jefferson and CeeDee are like a toss-up, and then Hill is number 3. I've seen almost any sort of ranking of these guys as a part of the top 5. I know a lot of people have also put Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra in the same discussion with them. I think those guys are slightly behind just due to different factors within their teams. I don't really know what the Jets' offense is going to look like, how good a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers is going to be. I do believe that Garrett Wilson is going to be a target hog. That's why he's number 5 in my rankings. Number 7 in my rankings at wide receiver. Amon-Ra, maybe Jameson Williams takes a leap. Sam Laporta ended up doing more work. There's an awful lot to go around. Now, his solid baseline is really good. I just doubt he's ever going to have the production to be the number 1 wide receiver. Now, floor means something along with ceiling. And I think that his floor, he and Garrett Wilson are very similar. I have more issues with the Jets offense as a whole in hitting that upside for Garrett Wilson than I would with Amon-Ra, whose floor I know is very solidly in 14 of 17 games indoors is going to be very helpful for Amon-Ra. Dude averages 8 catches a game. He's going to be absolutely fine. But with the other 3 at the top, J.J. McCarthy going down for the season and Sam Darnold being the starter, now Nick Mullins being the backup in Minnesota, I really think benefits Justin Jefferson. Who's not afraid to just chuck it up to someone good? Sam Darnold. And we've talked, I've talked privately now on the show that Sam Darnold, listen, he's not good, but he's fine. And he's going to run a little bit more than you think. He might actually be a pretty decent fantasy asset. But he knows where his bread is going to be buttered, and he's going to check it up. This season for Justin Jefferson, I find, is very reminiscent of the Jameis and Mike Evans year. When people were like, Jameis, he sucks. Like, yeah, Jameis does kind of suck. And you know what he did? He just chucked balls down the field into traffic to Mike Evans, who is his best receiver. Did he throw 30 picks? Absolutely. Here's the funny thing about that, though. That's not bad for fantasy football. You don't want your quarterback throwing picks. Sometimes you do, I suppose. But Sam Darnold's going to throw some pick sixes. He's going to make some terrible decisions. And all that's going to do is to lead to more points for the other team, which what? Keeps the Vikings throwing at all times. This could be like a target record because Addison's already banged up. He's not expected to be missing any time with an ankle injury, but he's another one. Now we have this ankle problem. He was carted off the field. They say he's going to be fine. We'll see. There's no fracture in his ankle that they've at least reported on for the moment. That's just more for Jefferson. CD's kind of the same way, but I like the tertiary options and the secondary options in Dallas a little bit more. Now, if Addison comes back at 100% and Hawkinson returns in week 10, 11, whatever the hell it might be, then yeah, maybe the target share decreases a little bit. With Lamb, he's still contending with Brendan Cooks, with Jake Ferguson, and those guys I do believe are better options than the Vikings' other options. So it's just going to be Jefferson all the time. If he stays healthy, he might have 170 targets, and Darnold's just going to chuck it down the field. So I love Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 1 and as the number 2 player overall in season-long fantasy football. And I think that the only reason that he's being ranked a little bit lower in other places is because he fucked everyone last year. It happens, all right? Guys get hurt. Part of the first round is just dodging landmines as we go through it. So then we circle a little bit down the list. You'll see that Breece Hall, Bijan 5-6, then Jonathan Taylor at 7. Or, as I mentioned, Gibbs was initially a part of this tier before the hamstring problem. With Jonathan Taylor, the more I think about it, with Anthony Richardson coming back, if Anthony Richardson continues to run like the way that he did last year, he's going to get hurt again, and it's not going to be good for anyone. So part of Taylor's value somewhat is tied to Richardson, but what I do think happens is, well, you're not going to see a lot of dump-off options for Jonathan Taylor. What you're going to see is just easier running lanes for him because everyone has to bite on what Richardson is doing. He needs to run enough on designed runs to keep the defense honest. Then there's just going to be lanes for Jonathan Taylor. He's going to take off. He is in contention with these other 3 guys to be the running back number 1 in the right season. You need touchdown variance to be on your side, which means you need Anthony Richardson to not run the ball all the time at the goal line, which is a big if. That's why he's last in this tier of this mini tier of 3 running backs going from 2 to 4. Like Breece Hall, yeah, he's going to do everything. Bijan, we expect him to do everything. We'll see what happens in Atlanta, but it'd be crazy just not to turn the ball over to Bijan at this point, and then you get down to him. The other running backs from 12 to, 12 is Kyron, who, again, does everything. Will he be usurped? Probably not. You're probably looking at an 80-20 split for him at the moment with the Rams. Then you have Saquon with the Eagles. Now, again, he kind of suffers from the same fate potentially as what we're going to see with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, where if Anthony Richardson steals all the touchdowns, the overall value of Jonathan Taylor will be decreased. It's no different than tush push with Jalen Hurts. Now, obviously, Jason Kelce is gone. Will they be able to perform that as much? And after Jalen Hurts got banged up last year, it was a little bit less effective, but it was still very effective. When you get on the 2-yard line and you have a play that you can just run for a touchdown every time, you're probably going to keep doing that until something dramatically bad happens. Can you mix it up with Saquon from time to time? Sure. You can do that. But I do think it hurts his overall touchdown production, which makes him a part of this tier and not the tier above right now. So I have Gibbs just behind them because of the injury concerns. And then the next few running backs, 18, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco at 19. And then there's no other running back on my list until we get down to, where are we at? This James Cook, 31, Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara from 31 to 33. Those are the next running backs on the list. So I would want to escape one of the first 2 rounds with one of these guys. That's why I've propelled them up the rankings just based on how people draft. Now, if you got stuck with Cook, Etienne, Kamara as your running back 1, I mean, it's not great. It's not bad. by any stretch of the imagination, but I would want to be targeting one of those like 7 or 8 guys, because then you're into like your Joe Mixons and Aaron Jones, who I have at the end of 4th round value. I actually like, people are really down on Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs right now with their respective moves from Green Bay to Minnesota, from Vegas to Green Bay. Everything that I've heard out of Green Bay, everyone is so high on the Packers this year. Got to draft Jordan Love. Jaden Reed, unstoppable. Dontavian Wicks, he's the best sleeper in the draft. But then you just have Josh Jacobs, who all they've been talking about how good his receiving game work is. He might play like 85% of the snaps. I mean, maybe Lloyd will eventually end up coming in, and we'll see what's going on with his injury too at the same time. But there's a reason that you picked this guy up, to run him into the ground in the season when you're trying to make a leap. He just feels like a workhorse. And if they end up running a little bit more than we think, he could be extremely valuable with the Packers. So Josh Jacobs is someone that I'm really trying to target. He's number 43 in the rankings, just one spot ahead of Devin Achane, who, as my friend really enjoys to call Devin Achane for some reason. He thought he was French, but that's just a great name. Then Mixon, then Aaron Jones, and then you get into your like Trey McBride, who I have on a tier by himself as the tight end number 3, well behind Kelsey and Laporta, who come in at number 31 and 32. The only really big changes that I can see happening right now to the rankings is if Ayuk ends up somehow on the move. Now, as of this recording, that is not happening. By the time we speak on Tuesday, maybe something will have happened. Debo would fly up the rankings. So right now I have Ayuk at 23 and I have Debo at 27. They're both good options, but I would move Debo up probably into that Puka 17-18 range along with Chris Olave as a part of that tier of receivers. When you take a look at the splits between Samuel with and without Ayuk around, it's just all Debo all the time. He's going to be an absolute fantasy superstar if that's the case, but I just don't envision that happening. If it was going to happen, it feels like it would have happened by now, and if Ayuk does get traded, it doesn't seem like the Steelers are actually going to end up getting him. Maybe they will, but it would hurt George Pickens massively in that regard, and I don't have Pickens that high anyway. I have Pickens at number 48 overall, and if you're looking at the single player boards right now as a part of the visual aspect of the show, and you see rank in the top right-hand side, those are the projection ranks. Those aren't my rankings. My rankings are on the list of 10, and in the newsletter, those are the projection ranks from runthesims.com. Go create your free account over there right now. So we talked about quarterbacks a little bit. The next tier of quarterback that I'm really concerned about doesn't really come into later. So I want one of those 3 quarterbacks being Allen, Hurts, or Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's 35. Lamar, Josh Allen, or Jalen Hurts. And then after that, I'm looking at, where the hell do I have them next? Oh, boy. Yeah, here we are. Number 75. No, I have Mahomes at number 58, along with Tony Richardson at number 59. And then there's a huge tier of Dak, Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams, and Brock Purdy. I love Jaden Daniels this year. Now, he might be an absolute flameout and a bust, but if anyone was geared in a lab to be awesome at fantasy football at the quarterback position, it's gonna be Jaden Daniels. And the Caleb Williams could have a little bit of that as well. Obviously, he has better options in the receiving game, and that team seems to be a little bit better than Washington does. And I think that people really underrate that Caleb Williams can run a lot more than maybe we're expecting. I don't expect him to be Josh Allen in terms of the scenario that I'm going to point out to you, but Josh Allen wasn't this like elite runner in college. He just kind of dropped back and flung it. But he had mobility once he got to the NFL, and guys couldn't separate immediately against the competition. He just put his head down and run. I don't think that Caleb Williams is going to run as much as Josh Allen, probably not even half as much as Josh Allen, but he does have that in him to extend the play, and if stuff breaks down in front of him, he's going to take off for a few long runs, maybe very reminiscent to what Jordan Love did a year ago, but a little bit more than that. If he starts calling his own number around the goal line a little bit, even 2, 3, 4 times a year, that's really going to propel him up. That's why I like him a little bit ahead of Brock Purdy, but that's like my safe tier of guys. And I was even thinking about ranking Purdy and Caleb Williams above Joe Burrow. Now, these aren't real life quarterback rankings. Obviously, Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than both these guys. But in terms of fantasy, it's tough. When Joe Burrow doesn't run, which he doesn't, then you really need him to drop back and pass so often, especially when he's never calling his own name. So you see that with Love sometimes, you see that with Dak Prescott and even CJ Stroud, that these guys are primarily pocket passers on teams that are going to throw a lot, but they still will inside of the 5-yard line. If nothing's there or even a design quarterback draw, they will get themselves in. Those extra fantasy points are so valuable. But I do have them all as a part of the same tier. If I didn't get one of the elite guys, this is where I would wait and take them. Probably, I mean, you probably don't need to take them this highly, honestly. If I have Jaden Daniels ranked at 77th, which you do, then you could probably still take him in the 9th round and start piling up other guys around this range. So that's what I'm doing with my rankings. That's a quick breakdown of how I'm looking at everything so far in 2024. We're going to be back with Sealy. We're going to be back with news updates and how the rankings have shifted. And if you want to see the entire list, sub to the Mayo Media newsletter. That's completely free. I have the post up right now. It is in the description of this video, podcast, however you're consuming this content, and you can bookmark that and check back. That's where I will be making my updates. RunTheSims.com, completely free to make your projections with just an email, and code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now will get you a deposit bonus of up to $250, and hit that Google form down in the description or in the newsletter to pre-register for the Underdog PME co-main event, season-long fantasy pick'em pool. That's going to be great fun. We ran something similar a few years ago. Everyone had tremendous things to say, and there's going to be a good amount of money at the top for not a lot of money being put in. It's a nice dip into the toe. And Run the Sims actually has tools to help you make your picks on Underdog and any of the prop sites out there as well with the premium product. But you don't need to go to do that to get the fantasy projections. You can just go get those right now. Leave a rating and review while you're here as well. Smash the like, share it around, and do all that fun stuff. I am jazzed. Football season is going to be back. We got if you missed any of the division preview shows, all 8 are out now. I did rankings with Meanie for each of the positions. Those are all out on the audio feed and Mayo Media Networks, a sub. And then we have the win total shows, the season-long prop shows, me, Cam, and Rob going through all the awards. That's all coming in the next 2 weeks. We're back, baby! Fantasy football time. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!